All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause this selection at this time. It's time now for the health phase. Coming your way with Dr. Brown.
All right. All right. Thank you for that introduction, as always. Good afternoon, listeners. You're locked into WVOE, the voice of Ebony, where your health is our heartbeat. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Brown, president and founder of PressureMDAcademy, welcoming you to another enriching session of Health Facts, the show where wisdom meets wellness and knowledge is always in season. So we're here again. Thank you for everyone that's tuning in. Whether it's you're tuning in on the radio or you're tuning in online. Greatly appreciate you all checking in and supporting us and listening to the show and hopefully learning a little bit about your health and putting that knowledge into good use. Okay, so faithfully outworks is dead, and so is knowledge. So you also have to use that knowledge to make your life a little bit healthier. So today, what we're going to be talking about today is the kidneys. I know the last time we chatted, we were talking about high blood pressure, and because that's one of the things I do, high blood pressure, and then of course kidney disease. And so one of the things that I have noticed, and one of the things that prompted the high blood pressure talk, was that I was noticing that people, it's like they would know about something, but there are more levels to it. So decided for the next three shows, we're going to focus on the kidneys. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about the kidneys because I feel like the kidneys are kind of a mystery organ. People know about them, but really not sure how they work or how important they are until, of course, they don't work anymore. Then that's when everybody gets a little concerned. The only thing they do know, a lot of people do know about dialysis, but there's a lot of stuff that goes between the time your kidneys get a little bit of an injury and the time that you're on dialysis. So we're going to talk a little bit over these next three shows about the kidneys, kind of what they are, what they do, when they get damaged, how to monitor for that thing. And then, our last show is going to focus on, what happens when those kidneys completely fail. Like what is this dialysis stuff? What is this, we call, in the profession, we call it renal replacement therapy. What are these renal replacement therapies? What do they mean, in terms of your life and stuff of that nature? So we're going to talk a little bit about this. And we're going to start out though with, what we always do. We're going to talk about what they are and why they matter. So we're going to do it's almost like a kidneys 101 today, where we just kind of talk a little bit about it and hopefully kind of help you understand, why this is important. For those of you that are online, I'm also going to do a little bit of sharing of the screen, and hopefully this will help you, give you some visual aids in order to help understand what these kidneys are. Okay. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about the kidneys. Okay, so we're going to talk about the kidneys. So what are the kidneys? First of all, the kidneys are, they're two fist-sized organs that fit. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and share the screen because I think it's going to help you out a little bit. Okay, let's see if this will work for us. They're two fist-sized organs that fit right below the rib cage, and they're closer to the back, right? So got the screen up here. Hopefully this is from Life Science Plus, but these are the two kidneys. So you got two kidneys. Most people have two kidneys. Every now and then you actually can have just one kidneys, be born with just one kidneys, either they're fused or maybe one just didn't develop properly. But most people, for the most part, will have two kidneys. If you ball up a fist, they're about the size of a fist, and they are on either side of the spinal cord, and they're actually closer to the back. This one over here is actually covered by, kind of covered by the liver a little bit, and the other one is a little more, I guess, free or open or something of that nature. So this is pretty much where they sit, and so they are, kind of one of the body's organs that helps to clean. Helps to clean the blood. Okay. And so one of the things about the kidneys is that, and kidney disease, I guess, is that it's not another one of these little silent diseases, because the kidneys are pretty redundant. They're pretty, I call them pretty tough. And they can lose a lot of function before you know what's going on there. Okay. And so, that's kind of where they are. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the the data behind this, and then we're going to share some other parts of the screen. So, in terms of how common, kidney disease is, about 1 in 7 people in the US, so about 35 million adults, have chronic kidney disease. The risk, of course, climbs with age. And, about 20% of non-Hispanic Black adults live with chronic kidney disease. That's the highest of any group. And kind of like I said, a lot of people don't know that they have this. It's a disease that it is very silent, kind of like high blood pressure. And actually, unlike high blood pressure, high blood pressure, if it gets high enough, you might have a headache or something of that nature. But, for kidney disease, you can lose most of your kidney function and never know it, never feel it, never notice anything about it, right? So that's kind of one of the reasons why this is super important. And so we talked about what they are, where they are, what they kind of look like. One of the things with your kidneys, and this is what a lot of people don't know, and that is the kidney is comprised of what we call functional units. The special name is called a nephron. And that's what kind of does the work. But before we talk about that a little bit further, what we're going to talk about is how this kidney is set up. So we're going to share this screen again. And basically the way the kidneys work is that they get the blood. So it's a filter. So it's got to get the blood pumped, right? So there's a tube called an artery, and and the arteries kind of carry blood from the heart to the rest of the body. And so every time the heart squeezes, about 20% of that blood goes to the kidney. And its purpose is to the purpose of that kidney is to clean that blood. If there's too much water in your body, is to take the extra water out. It kind of balances the electrolytes and things of this nature. And so when it does this, the way it does this is that it kind of it flows through these things called nephrons, and ultimately something called a glomeruli. It's got a fancy name or whatever, but that's the name of it. And so the blood flows to that, and these are specialized filters. And these filters, and this is where the miracle of the kidney comes, because these filters can tell whether there's too much salt in the blood, too little salt in the blood, whether or not there's too much water in there, too little water, whether or not you have enough what we call hemoglobin in there. And it can help to adjust those electrolytes and get rid of the waste products. It can help balance out some of the electrolytes, and it can actually secrete a hormone to help your body make a little bit more blood if it needs to. And so that's kind of how that kidney works. And the product that it produces is actually urine. So this is how urine is made, how pee is made. And what it does is it forms that urine, it sends it through a tube called a ureter and into the bladder. And then from the bladder, of course, to the outside. So that's how it goes. And then, of course, the cleaned blood goes back into the body, and and kind of helps to balance everything out there. So that's kind of how it works. So that's kind of your image. And kind of like I said, the functional unit is something called a nephron. And that nephron, they're like about 1 million, when you're born, about 1 million nephrons per kidney. And as we get older and as we have certain diseases, those nephrons get damaged. So basically it's like so think of 1 million filters inside of your main filter. And then, like I said, as things go on, those filters start to clog up, or they start to get inflamed, or they start to get damaged. So they can't do their job as well as they should. And that's, when we start having what we call chronic kidney disease. Okay. So, so what kind of things can damage this kidney? Okay. And the most common things that damage your kidney are going to be diabetes, number one, high blood pressure, number two. So those two things are the biggest things that cause damage to the kidney, i.e. damage to those filters, and cause us to have less kidney function as time goes on. Now, there are other risk factors that can contribute, heart disease, obesity, family history. Every time you get injury to the kidney, it makes you more prone to kidney disease as well. There's certain medications, such as what we call NSAIDs, and these are things like Aleve, ibuprofen, that are actually sold over the counter. All those things can kind of damage the kidney over time. And once that damage happens, like I said, sometimes it can be reversed, other times it can't. So so we talked about what the kidney is, where the kidneys are, kind of how it functions, a little bit how it functions, and that is the filter. and a little bit about what can cause damage to it. Okay, and then of course, what do you want to talk about? So now that we know that it can get damaged, then the next conversation is around, okay, well, if it can get damaged and I can't feel it, well, how am I supposed to know, or how do I monitor my kidney function? And we're going to talk, kind of a little bit more in depth about this next time, but we're going to go ahead and introduce a couple of terms. So one is something called an EGFR. So if you pull, and this is a blood test, and it's basically a calculation. And I tell people to think of that number as their kidney number. And that kidney number tells you how much kidney function is remaining. It's kind of like if you had if you have a battery, like if you look at your phone and there's a little battery gauge up there. And so the lower that number, the less battery you have. So the EGFR, think of it as that, as a kidney number, or as your kidney gauge or kidney function gauge. So the lower that number, the less kidney function you have. So most people are born, it'll be right around 100, some a little less, some a little bit more. But as damage starts to happen to that kidney, then we will be able to see that number start to drop. Now, one thing about it can bounce up and down. If you're a little dehydrated, maybe it drops down. Hydrate yourself, the kidneys are happy, so therefore it goes a little bit up. So that EGFR tells you how much is left. Now, but sometimes even before that kidney number or the kidney function drops, you actually can detect that there is damage going on to the kidney, or i.e. those filters. And that is something, it's called a urine albumin to creatinine ratio, basically trying to detect something called albumin. And this is a specific type of protein that circulates in your body. And what happens is that your kidney is actually supposed to is really good about holding the protein inside of your body. Just think about it. Suppose this filter were to just let the protein kind of leak outside the blood, you would lose all your protein. So the kidney in its natural and healthy state is able to actually keep that protein from going outside of your bloodstream. It's able to keep that protein inside your bloodstream. Okay. So, but what can happen is that if you're getting damage, we can actually detect albumin in the urine, because remember, the blood goes into the kidney, it goes into those little filters, and then it's supposed to go back, back into the veins and back into the body. Well, and then what's supposed to come out of that is supposed to be all of the toxins, extra water, electrolyte management and stuff of that nature. That's supposed to all go into the urine. So think of the urine as the waste product. So if we check that urine or that waste product, and we see that there's albumin in there, well, this is something abnormal. So we know something's going on there. So one of the screening tests that you can use, or you should be using, is something called a urine albumin to creatinine ratio, and that can help you to detect whether or not there is early signs of damage going on with that kidney. So sometimes even though the function is really high, like I said, that urine albumin to creatinine ratio is elevated, we say, hey, something's going on here, we need to investigate. Okay. So all right, so we know what the kidney is. Okay, so the kidney, one of two organs, fist-sized organs, like I said, just below the rib cage on either side of the spine. Most people are born with two. You can be born with one, or if there's certain things to go on, like I said, you may lose one. Okay, so we know that goes on. We know that the kidney gets a significant amount of blood flow every time the heart beats. So approximately 20% every time that heart beats, about 20% of that blood goes into the kidney, and that whenever it goes into the kidney, what happens is that it kind of it splits up and it goes into the what you can think of as the microfilters, and there and from there, like I said, waste products are removed, the electrolytes are balanced, and then like I said, the blood then goes back into the body, and like I said, you're able to regulate things like your sodium level, your potassium level, and things that magnesium, all the good stuff. Okay, so we talked about that, and then we talked about some of the risk factors for kidney disease, and those risk factors, the biggest risk factors being diabetes. The second highest is going to be high blood pressure, but that those are not the only risk factors for kidney disease. That you can have other things that are going on, like I said, like obesity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that can go on. And then the thing that we want to talk about, that we talked about then, is how do we monitor the kidney function and make sure it's healthy? And that's that EGFR and the urine albumin to creatinine ratio. So basically a urine albumin test is what you're looking for to make sure that that kidney is healthy. So those are two different things you want to talk about. Okay, so we kind of covered all those things, and this is just kind of getting you in the mindset of what this kidney is and how important it is. And speaking of how important it is, why don't we chat a little bit about, you know, the functions of the kidney, because that is a huge thing that a lot of people actually do not know. And I'm going to share this screen one more time because I think this is really important for people to recognize. And all right, so we're over here, the function of the kidney, and you know what it can do. What it does is it actually balances the acid base inside of the body. So I know people have talked a little bit about acid base, and you know sometimes there's that little Dr. CB stuff where you're supposed to alkalinize your blood, but actually the body does a great job of keeping the amount of acid in your blood at a certain level. Is a combination between the kidney, a primary combination of the kidneys and then the lungs that try to keep your pH at a certain level inside of the bloodstream. And so the kidneys are extraordinarily important in that process, and they actually can create the buffering agents, what we call bicarb. They actually are important in creating that component of your blood that kind of helps balance out the acid inside the body. Okay, so that's one thing it does that a lot of people don't know about. And then water removal. I think everybody is pretty familiar with the water removal part. So and this is something that's actually kind of cool. I'm a kidney doctor. I think it's kind of cool, but you can tell how dehydrated you are just by looking at the color of your urine. So as it gets darker, then that you're becoming a little more dehydrated. The urine is a little more concentrated. You can actually just sit down and drink water, and as your body gets hydrated, that urine gets lighter. And the reason it gets lighter is because you're basically peeing out the extra water that you don't need. So the kidneys are really important in regulating how much water is inside of your body. So that's another function that the kidneys do. Then there's something called erythropoiesis. It's a long name, but a long story short is that it releases a hormone that helps to your body to build the red blood cells. And, we may not have talked about it before, but the red blood cells are what carry oxygen around to the body. So if the number of red blood cells in the body is getting a little lower, the kidneys actually can sense that and actually can release a hormone to kind of help your body make those red blood cells. Then of course, toxin removal. We chatted about that a little bit before, but yeah, so the kidneys are able to remove certain toxins out of the body, and they put it in the urine, and of course you pee that out. And then another one is blood pressure control. This is something that a lot of people do not know, and that is that the kidneys are very important in the control of your blood pressure. They actually release certain hormones that kind of help regulate the blood pressure. So the kidneys are blood pressure agents. So that's important. Then, of course, there's electrolyte balance. So the kidneys help you to maintain a certain level of electrolytes within the body. So stuff like potassium, magnesium, sodium. The kidneys are important in regulating that. And then last but not least, and I think that this is one that really gets a lot of folks, and that is vitamin D activation. Because as we know, vitamin D is kind of the sunshine vitamin. So your body actually naturally makes vitamin D and when you go out in the sun. And that's usually kind of an inactive vitamin D. And what happens is that the kidneys help you to make an activated form of vitamin D. So you go from an inactive form to an active form of vitamin D. So that's something that happens that happens with the kidneys. So basically, the function of the kidneys, balancing the acid base in the body, removing excess water and holding on to water to keep you from dehydrating. What we call erythropoiesis are helping to create or sending a signal to create more red blood cells. Removing extra toxins from the body. Helping to control the blood pressure, balancing electrolytes, stuff like potassium, sodium, things of this nature, and then also activating vitamin D, which is very important, of course. I think everybody knows that. So those are kind of the functions of the kidney. And like I said, a lot of functions that people just don't know. They just don't know. I mean, it's stuff that you just don't know. So, all right. So we talked about what the kidneys are, what they do, where they are, and kind of how they function, how they do their job. Now we want to chat a little bit about, and we also talked about, how to monitor kidney. Now, one thing I did want to mention is, and that is how to kind of monitor or how to prevent kidney disease. It's more so monitoring. So I think that this goes into prevention. So you want to know your numbers. You want to know how your numbers in order to know what the status of your kidney is. Okay. So of course, for the kidneys, number one, you want to know your EGFR, that kidney number. You want to know whether or not you got albumin in your urine, so your urine albumin to creatinine ratio. So those are two important ones. But then you want to know your blood pressure. You want to know like I said, is your blood pressure controlled? And we talked about that a little bit the last two sessions. But like I said, make sure your blood pressure is under control in that goal. Because like I said, that high blood pressure, like what did we say? Diabetes was number one for causing kidney damage. High blood pressure is number two for causing kidney damage. And the high blood pressure part is very important for African Americans because they have a greater tendency to develop kidney disease from high blood pressure. And there's actually a genetic marker, which we can talk about a little later on. So know your numbers, know what they mean. And like I said, when you get blood work, hey, it's not just oh, everything's fine. It's like, okay, well, what is my kidney number? What's my EGFR? Is that urine albumin to creatinine ratio? Is that completely normal? Is it just a little bit abnormal? Those are things that you want to know and you want to keep track of. Okay, so you want to keep track of those numbers. Other things you can do is that sodium. You want to decrease sodium intake, and this is just kind of a lifestyle measure it thing, and that is you want to make sure you're sticking to closer to a 2-gram sodium diet a day. This is just part of the lifestyle thing in general, and that seems to lower blood pressure in a lot of populations. So you want to make sure you're keeping control of that. You want to make sure that you're keeping your weight closer to a normal weight. Of course, BMI is not perfect, but it's kind of what most studies use as their marker for excess weight. So if your BMI is elevated, you may need to get that weight down. Granted, you can also do it, but we'll talk about that in the future as well. And that is, because there are ways to tell whether or not all of your weight is, whether it's adipose tissue or fat versus muscle. And those things are real, but we can talk about it later on because there's certain things you can do to kind of check that as well. And then keep yourself well hydrated. So you want to make sure you're doing some prevention there. And those are pretty much the biggies for this show. So this show was really about getting you some basic information about the kidneys in general. We'll talk a little bit more about chronic kidney disease next week, in terms of like tracking it. There's stages that you have for chronic kidney disease. And there are ways you can monitor that a little more effectively and know where you are. But this show today really was about just kind of giving you some of the basics and some of that background, because otherwise, like I said, you kind of going in, somebody tells you got kidney disease, like I said, most people are like, I didn't even know. Some people don't know they had kidneys, but just knowing some of the background, some of the information, and why these kidneys are important, and why certain things may be happening to you. Because one of the things that happens with people with chronic kidney disease, sometimes as their kidney function gets lower, it gets harder to control their blood pressure. And people like, okay, they may not understand that, but the kidneys help to regulate blood pressure. So as they decrease their function, as they get damaged, their ability to help regulate that blood pressure will decrease, and you may need more blood pressure medications. So those things happen. So that's what we want to talk about today is just kind of give you a nice little background. Hopefully this kind of helped you with understanding a little bit more about the kidneys and why they're important, and how to monitor them basically. And kind of go from there. But like I said, and then also talking a little bit more about prevention. Like I said, making sure that a big part of prevention and advocacy is to know your numbers and actually get those numbers. And so that whenever you get reports back from your primary care physician or primary care clinician, you want to make sure that that is not just somebody saying, hey, everything's good. You want a copy. you make sure you get a copy of your labs, get a copy of your numbers. That's how you learn. And it may be that, you know, when they give them to you, you know, some people might be shell shocked, or you haven't had them before. You can always take them, you know, take them home, or download your app and look at an app and write down your questions. Hey, you know, I noticed this was red. This was red. What does that mean? And schedule your follow-up appointment where you just kind of go over your labs and make sure that you understand what's going on and make sure nothing is changing. So that's because those things are extremely important. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. Now, one thing, and this, I just want to kind of bust this myth. Okay, this is something I really want to bust in terms of the kidneys, because I get this all the time when people come in. Because the first thing they're going to tell me is one or two things. They just say, "Well, I don't have any pain in my back. I don't have any pain in my back," and the other is, "Well, my urine is clear." So, so a lot of people think that clear urine means healthy kidneys. Okay, they're like, "Oh, I pee clear, nothing's going on, the whole 9 yards." I'm like, no, 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 no. Clear urine, or even the amount of urine, does not mean that your kidneys are healthy. Okay. The only way to tell if your kidneys are healthy is if you get those lab numbers. This piece I do want to emphasize today, because you cannot tell how well your kidneys are doing by how you feel. If by the time you feel symptoms and signs from your kidneys are almost gone. As a matter of fact, there's a condition called uremia where you do feel sick, you don't want to eat, and it's because of your kidneys. But guess how you manage that? It's called dialysis. That means your kidneys are gone. So you don't want to wait until that point in time where your kidneys are completely gone. You want to find out earlier, so you can find out if there's something you can do to treat it, if there's something you can do to manage it, or if there's it, or even if it's something that you can do to slow it down. And that means being proactive, understanding your numbers, understanding what things mean, and track and cooperating with your primary care clinician. If you need to be referred to a kidney specialist, getting referred to a kidney specialist, but you want to do it early. But clear urine means healthy kidneys. That is not the case. You have to have your labs. You have to have your numbers. Okay. And then the other thing is, you know, the back pain thing. Like the people think that because they don't have back pain, they don't have kidney disease. Same thing with the kidneys. You don't feel when your kidney function is decreasing. So just because you don't have back pain does not mean that you don't have kidney disease. So these two things I really want to emphasize, because I know somebody out there is in the back of somebody's mind. So I want to make sure that you understand that piece. So just kind of in closing, yeah, I think our time is wrapping up here today, and that is, you know, for kidney disease, you know, you want to make sure you understand what the kidneys are, what they're doing, and then you also want to understand the importance of your numbers, so that EGFR, kidney number, and then the urine albumin to creatinine ratio, which kind of detects very early kidney damage, or can detect very early kidney damage. And, you know, you want to make sure that you're getting screened if it's appropriate. So make sure you're working closely with your primary care clinician, or get yourself referred to kidney specialist if you need to. And make sure that you're doing all the things so that you can understand your kidneys and protect your health. Okay. So thank you for tuning in today to WVOE and for PressureMD Academy. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and so you can get so you can get a recording of this show. And until next week, I wish you good health. All right. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, ladies. We'd like to thank Dr. Brown for calling in on this great morning, great afternoon. And we will continue here at WVOE 1590 on your dial. Stay tuned.